you touched on it, Haaland. So last week, Josh said that Josh had asked a question: who was the best signing for the EPL in the summer? And Eves and I and Josh had a perspective on Haaland, not being a good signing for City because he hasn't been able to bring. But I want to hear Kelechi's point of view in terms of who the best signing was in the EPL, and if Haaland is actually has actually made City worse, which is what a lot of people are saying.
Best signing for the EPL. For some reason, I'm like blanking on all the signings now, and I can only think of Haaland.
Well, Casemiro for United.
Jesus to
Arsenal.
Chelsea.
No, nobody in Chelsea.
I don't know. I don't think that's it.
Nobody in Chelsea. Definitely not. Sterling to Chelsea. Ooh, that's signing.
Jesus to Jesus and Zinchenko to Arsenal, right? So those are you.
Yeah. I'd say
the main moves right now.
Yeah, I think those are the top ones. Yeah, I'd say I would say the best signing. This is going to be kind of weird because he was injured. I think it was Jesus to Arsenal, because I think that signing, like, just lifted. If you compare Jesus and Zinchenko together, I feel like that signing it was like the last missing piece. And in a weird way, I think the Jesus signing has made Nketiah better, because it's a lot of like similar movements, and it's like you take them out and then they kind of play the same ones, just more direct. But I think the Jesus signing was because that was last season, that was Arsenal's missing piece, and then that plugged it. I don't think that signing Haaland made. The reason why I'm not going to say that's the best signing is because City were already so good that it's difficult to think about any one person really moving the needle. I don't think City is worse because of Haaland. There's this myth that everybody keeps saying Guardiola doesn't play with a big, strong number 9.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, have they just forgotten his years in Bayern with Lewandowski, when literally Lewandowski was scored 5 goals in like 12 minutes or something, like broke all the records until the last season. And then just because he hasn't played with a number 9 at Barcelona doesn't mean. I mean, Messi still played as number 9. He was just like a false 9, albeit. But the profile, the notion that he can't play with that type of player is weird to me, because one, he's done it before. 2, it's like I don't see how you can score 25 goals in 19 games and be a worse player. I think City's problem is that they lost too many pieces. They basically got less deep and a bit more direct. And I think that's the biggest problem. I think some of the, like, keeping Grealish and losing Sterling, right? This notion of playing with these slow ball carrying wingers. They wouldn't even start Mahrez for half the season, and then now he starting him, and now they're getting better again. Goals. Right? And so it's just, I think it was almost trying to be too clever and trying to run everything too direct through De Bruyne. But I think they just lost a little bit of the depth. And then they've also had like these injuries to like Silva, who was crucial for them from a depth perspective. Gundogan's back now, but he's like kind of out of form. I think just have a bunch of players that are out of form. But I don't see how Haaland makes them worse. Just because they're not top of the league doesn't mean that he's made them worse, because it could just be that Arsenal have gotten just that much better. Because 50 points in 19 games, it's like, who was doing that other than maybe City, like maybe 2 years ago? So I think that's the perspective everybody's kind of losing. It's just, they're not top of the league like they always are, so therefore Haaland has made them worse. It's like, no, you lost like 4 players and you brought in 1. Like, that's kind of
and your squad, the core has aged, right? Right? Yeah. Bernardo, I was about to say Ziyech. Sorry, that's a little bit racist. Mahrez, and I know he's Algerian. I know. Ziyech is Moroccan. And then you have the other situation too, where you have Bernardo Silva and you had this issue of, oh, he wants to leave because he's not guaranteed. And, he's also another year his age. And I think another thing we should realize, everybody except for Haaland on the starting lineup went to the World Cup. Not many teams in the EPL had that situation where you literally had everybody in your starting lineup go to the World Cup and actually play, right? And so City is obviously going to hurt more coming back out of it. And to rely on what's his name, Haaland, to then just be able to pick up the slack, it's not gonna happen, But Josh, I know you had that perspective, and you sent me that little that I don't know who that guy was,
snippet.
EPR Sports or whatever, but I feel like just exactly what Gledgy said. There's a perspective that hasn't been taken into consideration, and to put that on Haaland and not look at the whole picture is short-sighted.
And the reason because when I had brought that question out, right, was I know the thing was, it wasn't me saying that Haaland wasn't a good signing. I'm just saying, for, like we said, for what City already was, right, versus where Arsenal was coming from. I think Jesus was just a better signing because of what he just lifted that team. I think if he had started the season with just Nketiah would not have had this belief, right? But the fact that the wheels are rolling, everything is all good, and Nketiah is coming in and he's like, I want to be part of this team. So it creates that energy. And I think another thing that you've talked about, Kel's mentioned about City losing that squad depth. They didn't just lose the squad depth. They lost players in Jesus and Sterling that, even if they're not scoring, they create. They do a lot more. If you've noticed the games that Haaland hasn't scored in, he's just kind of there. Like even the game against United, at some point I forgot that Haaland was even on the field. And I think it also goes back to that Mbappe versus Haaland debate. And I'm like, you can't, like, Mbappe, he creates his own goals. You know what I mean? Yeah. He can create his own goals. And I think this is where Haaland is. We're going to find out in the Champions League. I think this is because if they just win the league, if City just wins the league and that's it, then at that point, did he really add to City, right? Versus I think the Champions League will tell what he does in the Champions League, obviously with City, to see if his signing was actually that successful. But I do agree. I see it from both sides, right? Like, he's scoring goals. You can't take that away from him. He just scored a hat-trick against Wolves. But a lot of these goals I'm seeing, my thing was Jesus and Sterling scored those goals last season, right? Because a lot of his goals are not even, they're a lot of tapping, a lot of tapping. He's strong. He can outpower a defender. And
his movement is epic, right, Josh?
Well, the movement is basically like, what I mean by the movement is not the same type of movement of Jesus type of movement I'm talking about.
No, 100%.
But so yeah, that's why I'm kind of like, okay, I need more to his game than just, because with City as a striker, you're going to score goals. Like that's almost a given.
Yeah, in Pep's system for sure.
Yeah, in Pep's system, like,
And you make a valid point, because even in Dortmund, it was the same thing. He needed Jude Bellingham. He needed Sancho, right? He needed all these players. When Sancho left, Dortmund didn't have that level of creativity, and Jude Bellingham had to step up, right? I think if Jude Bellingham would have left before Haaland, we would have seen Haaland being exposed. He needs service in that regard. So yeah, same situation.
And also, like, you look at like a Jesus, right? Like the different, like, Jesus gets the ball, doesn't matter where he is on the field. You need 5 players to stop him. So that's
Jesus reminds me of Benzema.
If City's team last year, the team that they had last year, so they had Sterling, they had Mahrez, they had everybody, Silva, everybody. Silva was still happy, right? If that team didn't have Jesus and that team just had Haaland, I think the question we want to ask is, like, would that team be better than this team? Because I feel like the problem with Haaland, like Jesus, he was playing as a winger for City. Like, he wasn't playing in the middle.
No.
Like, right? So he was sharing that position with Sterling.
Yeah.
He came to Arsenal because he wanted to play as a number 9. And then because he has those attributes already, then he can play this like double role, right? Basically like a fast Benzema, essentially.
Yeah.
But if you take that team of last year of City and you just take out Jesus and put in Haaland, bearing in mind you would still have Sterling and Grealish or whoever on the right, Foden also in there somewhere, Silva, Gundogan, De Bruyne, Mahrez, and you just add Haaland to that team of last year. I think that's kind of the comparison. That's when you can really say, did he make the team better or worse? He's just playing on a worse team than last year.
Yeah, yes.
I see your point. He's a different type of player from Jesus. And City, they lost all their runners. They only have Mahrez. Everybody else is a bunch of number 10s playing on the wing. Like, to me, Foden is a central. This is a number 10 to me.
And Foden is not even playing these days. I'm like, I don't know. I think he's injured.
Grealish, this is another number 10 to me.
But, hey.
So with Silva, right. Then the other, Zinchenko is another one that he sold, which would also give you width. And then now you're playing Cancelo in there. Walker has been injured for the whole. I feel like the City is just like, I think they're like recalibrating this year. And I think I don't think that if they had Jesus, they sold everybody and just kept Jesus, I don't think that they would have been better placed. I think they would have just scored fewer goals because it's almost like they have lost a lot of their width. And so they have to go very direct. And that's what Haaland does really well. In terms of added value to the team, I agree with you. I think Jesus is the biggest. That's like, when you just have these things, like we're missing this, we're just missing this. And then they just go and grab it and drop it right in there. It was just like, okay, now I can have hope this season.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe it. For the longest time, I was like, nah, Jesus isn't coming. Jesus isn't coming. And then he came and I was like,
I didn't think he would want to come, to be honest.
Same. That was the other thing. So, and then Zinchenko on top of it. It was just like, for me, I was like, yo, this is too good to be true. Like, did Pep Guardiola and did Arteta make a bet with Pep Guardiola and then Guardiola lost the bet? Like, it was like a steal. And then Sterling also leaving, like you're saying.
It was, I don't know if you remember, it was like that season. I hate to keep bringing everything back to Madrid, but I'm just going to really quickly. It was the season where we played Juventus in the Champions League final.
Mm-hmm.
That season, our squad was so deep, and I can liken it to the Barcelona. I think was it the 2012-13 season. There's a point where like your squad is so, when they had Fabregas coming off the bench, Pedro, all these people like they like
Alexis Sanchez.
Yeah, Alexis Sanchez. It's like the Madrid one where we had like
Morata,
James, the good James, Morata, when all these players were actually, what's his name? The PSG right back was coming off the bench.
Theo Hernandez was coming off the bench.
Theo on the other side, like it was like, and it was just like literally we sat there and it was just like, Jeff was like, we used to talk and it was like, oh, they're going to be good for so long. I'm like, we're not going to be able to keep all those players happy. And I think that's just what happened with City. It's like you get to a point where you're so deep that all these other players are like, Sterling's like, I could go make more money at Chelsea and start on Chelsea.
Like I've won
everything. Like, yeah, And I think that's what happened with these other guys, where they're just like, no, we're in our peaks. We want to start. I mean, as long as it's a good project, we'll go there. And then like they just kind of left, and City is now going to have to regroup and find the new best things, because Guardiola is really good at doing that, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think the main thing that I had said too was, the only way we'll find out is at the end of the season. My criteria was basically if City was only to win the Premier League and that was it, then to me that's a failure, at least for this season, right? He's been Haaland is signed up for more than one season, but at least for this season. But if Arsenal was to go and win, let's say the Europa League or win the league, then I would say that Jesus was a bigger impact of a signing than Haaland was. But like you said, obviously Jesus is injured now, and Arsenal is still flying, right? So you could also make the argument that maybe Jesus wasn't the reason that Arsenal is doing so well. He was part of the reason, but he isn't the main reason that Arsenal is doing so well. So yeah, but I think it's definitely a fun debate. Because it actually makes you really think, right? Because it's very easy to just jump on the bandwagon that, oh, Jesus is scoring a hat trick every game, but it's like, okay, there's context to it as well.
You mean Haaland is scoring a hat trick every game?
What did I say?
You said Jesus.
Sorry, Haaland is. Well,
I mean, he did start off on a tear scoring goals, but then he just went on this drought and then just started assisting.
His drought is
his
like
mentality
3
just
games.
not. Yeah, like
The drought is like 3
you,
games.
would you say?
I said the drought is like 3 games, and then everybody's like, "Oh yeah, where are the goals now?" And it was like hat trick. But I think to your point, it's like we gotta see past the goals. To your point, so the value of adding to the overall team, because this is like goes back to the whole Liverpool versus Mane thing, where I kept maintaining, and I think everybody, well, I know Jeff agrees that Mane was the better of Salah and Mane. Salah gets all the goals, right? But I was like, player wise, like who am I picking first? I'm picking Mane. I can get my goals from anywhere. I just need Mane on that team for again, as just says, like the movement off the ball and creating space for others, as well as your value on the ball. So I can see what you're saying about like, yeah, Haaland is a goal machine. If I had a pick, do I want Mbappe or Haaland on Madrid? I want Mbappe way before I want Haaland.
Hands down.
Anybody can be a Haaland. Not anybody, but I'll take a Haaland with 10 goals less if I have Mbappe on my team. Like I'm not taking Haaland. Haaland's like the last piece in a fully functioning team, right? So that's what I was saying. If you put Haaland on that City team of last year, nobody is even touching them because they can beat you everywhere at that point.
Yeah. Wow.
But I think that's the point that I think that's the point that you're raising. But to your point, end of the year is when we'll see the value. But yeah, he's definitely an interesting person to watch, though. He's a freak.
He's definitely great for FPL. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, definitely.